Hello P6, let's have a think about Monday's maths. So to get yourself underway today, I would love you to have a go at a money grid. Now we've done lots of these before, but let's just remind ourselves a little bit about a money grid. What we're trying to do is find the total of all the rows and the columns. So the rows, they go across, columns, they go down. So you need to look at the 4 coins that you have on each line. So on this one, if I'm starting by doing the rows, in this one I've got a 2p, a 1p, a 5p and a 1p. And I want to know how much that adds up to. Now when I do it, I always find it easier to imagine having the coins in order from the biggest to the smallest. So in order of value. So if it was me, I would go 5p plus 2p plus 1p plus 1p, and that's going to be 9p. And I write the answer over at the side. Now, of course, I could write it as 9p, but it would also be equally okay, of course, to write it like that as pounds. In the next one then, I've got a 10, a 50, a £2 coin and another 50. So I would go £2, 250p's, that'll make it £3, £3.10. And I write the answer in at the sides. And I keep going, so I work out the next row and then the next row. And then once I've done the 4 rows, what I have to do is work out the 4 columns. So in this column, if I put them in order of size, I've got a £2 coin, a 10, a 10 and a 2p. So £2, 20, £2.22. Don't forget your decimal point and your pound sign. What about in this one? Well, biggest coin, that'll be a 50, a 20, a 2 and a 1. So 50 and 20 is 70, 2 and 1, that's another 3p. So I could either write it as 73p, or it would be absolutely fine to write it like that as well. If it's £1 or more, make sure you start with the pound sign. Don't forget P6, we never have pound sign and p in the same answer. So if you've got p, you can't have a pound sign at the start. If you've got a pound sign, you cannot put the p at the end, okay? So there are 2 levels to choose from P6. Choose one of the 2 levels for your money grid. That's the slightly harder level. If you choose a slightly easier level, then there's no £2 coins, so the amounts of money are a little bit less. Now, our main task today is all to do with multiplication, and we're going to be multiplying some decimal numbers. And in particular, we're thinking about multiplying decimals that have got 2 numbers after the decimal point. We have been looking at our decimal numbers and we have been learning about our place value. We've been learning about the decimal point, how the numbers before it would be things like our units and perhaps tens and hundreds and thousands. But after the decimal point, we've got tenths, where we think about breaking something up into 10 equal parts, or we've got hundredths, where we're breaking it up into 100 different parts. And today we're going to practice multiplying our numbers which have got 2 numbers after the decimal point, so 2 decimal places. We're multiplying them by a single digit. So my first question says 3.58 times 6. Now look at where I've got my decimal points. I've got a decimal point in the 3.58 because there's a decimal number. I've got a decimal point, I've already put it into the answer for this one, so I've got my decimal point ready for the answer. Can you see it's underneath where the first decimal point is? But what you will see is I don't have a decimal point here. The reason I don't have a decimal point here is because I'm not multiplying by a decimal number. 6 is 6 full groups. It's not 0.6 that I'm multiplying by. I'm multiplying by a whole number. So when I'm multiplying by a whole number, there won't be a decimal point on this line. So I've got 3.58 times 6, no decimal point here. When I go to do my working out, I've already got my decimal point in. And if I look at my question, when I look at the question, I've got 2 numbers after the decimal point. In my answer, I'll also have to have 2 numbers after the decimal point. And then I just do it as I always would. I just do my multiplying. So 6 times 8 is, it's going to be 48. So I write down my 8 and I carry the little 4. Remember, bottom left-hand corner, P6 of the next box. So 6 8s are 48. 6 5s are 30, aren't they? Plus 4 more, Yeah, it's going to be 34. So put down your 4. Carry the little 3. 6 times 3 is, 18. And 3 more, 21. So how would I say that answer, P6? What does that number say? 21.48. Yeah. Did you remember to say each number separately? After the decimal point, we say each number separately. Now, the only difference would be if this was a money question. If this had been £3.58 and I was multiplying it by 6, then when I get my answer, my £21.48, I would say 48 because it's pounds, because it's money. If there's no pound sign, it's 21.48. If it was money, I would say £21.48. So I would say it differently. Let's do one more question together. So in number 2, I've got my 7.15 and I'm multiplying it by 4. Decimal point in between the 7 and the 1, 7.15. No decimal point on this line because I'm multiplying by 4 full groups. It's not a decimal number. But in my answer, I've got my decimal point in, and there will be 2 numbers after the decimal point, just like in my question. So let's have a go at this one. 4 times 5 is, 20. So put down your 2 and your 0. 4 5s are 20. 4 times 1 is 4, and 2 more would be 6. 4 times 7 is 28. Nothing to add to it, so we just write it down. So 7.15 multiplied by 4 would be 28.60. I could, if I was calling out that answer, leave out that 0. We talked about that last week. 28.6 or 28.60. Now P6, what you need to do today is download this page, and the first part of your task for today is to go and have a go at answering these 12 questions. Now I have given you the decimal points in all the questions and in the first 6 answers, but I haven't put the decimal point in for number 7 all the way up to number 12. You need to make sure that you put your decimal point in for that bit. So that's the main part of your task. For those of you who do the higher level task, then you're not finished because you now have an extension task to go and have a go at. Our extension task today is all money word problems. So we are going to be thinking about either adding, subtracting or multiplying. There's no dividing in any of today's questions. Now your questions are all to do with money. They might have one part, but they might be a 2-part question. So what you need to do is read through the question, think about rucksack, read it, understand it. So imagine what's happening in here. Think about what are the important words. Once you've done that, think, what operation am I going to use? Am I adding, subtracting or multiplying? Not dividing. So choose your operation. Once you've done that, solve it. So do your working out, get an answer and then go and check it. Perhaps if you've got space, go and do the inverse beside it. Can you check that you've got the right answer? If you're doing the inverse, you might need to divide, but you won't need to divide to do your main working out. So read through each question and then go and do your working out. Read the question really carefully, please, P6. You need to be really careful. Think about what is happening in the question. Am I adding, am I subtracting, or am I multiplying? All your answers, because they're money, are the same idea then as doing what we were doing earlier. If it's a multiplying question, you'll need to set it out like one of these questions. If it's an adding or subtracting question, you need to set it out the way we were setting them out last week. Be really careful. So you have got your extension task to have a go at. Then P6, you have a Convince Me card to have a look at today. Now we've used a few Convince Me cards at the beginning of P6. You might have used them in P5 as well. What we have in a Convince Me card is a question where you have to convince somebody at home, is what's being said on this page true? Is it false? And you need to give evidence to back up your statement. In this question, we have got a balance sum. Something times 2 is equal to something times 10. And the statement says, Thinking Tom here says, the second missing number is always even. So there's the second missing number. Will that number always be even? prove it. So can you come up with a few different ways to do this calculation? Will the second missing number always be even? Tell somebody about your thinking at home. Then, once you've had a go at that, for our challenge today, our interactive game for today, I would love you to go and play a game of Countdown. I don't know if you've ever seen the Channel 4 programme called Countdown in the afternoons, but one of the games they play in it is a numbers game. And in the numbers game, you're given a target number and you're given lots of numbers. And what you have to do is try and make the target number using these digits, and you can add, subtract, multiply or divide. So when you go to the countdown game looks like this. Okay, so let's have a look at this countdown game. Now, I've suggested on the website that you start with the easiest level, which is the total within 20. So I have got a target here of 11. I've got 1 minute to solve it. The time is already counting down. How could I make 11 using these numbers? Well, an easy one probably would be, well, there's more than one way I could do it. I could maybe do 8, add 3, or I could do 5, add 6. So I'm going to click on 5, add 6. Can you see it comes up here? 5 add 6, and then check it. And if it says well done, you've managed to work it out. Then click on new, and it gives me another one. How could I make 18 using these numbers? Can you think of a way? Well, you could just, of course, add 10 and 8. Or what you might decide to do, you might decide to make it more interesting. What I could do is I could do 3 times 3. What's 3 times 3? 3 times 3 is 9. And then multiply that by 2. And that also gives me 18. So you could start with the easier level. And then what you could do is have a go maybe at the harder level, the total within 100. Now, P6, how could I make 69 using these numbers? Can you think of how I could maybe make 69? I've got 5, 5, 5, 6, 2 and 4. How could I make 69? Can you think of a way to do it? Well, perhaps that might be your challenge. Maybe you could pause the video here and go and see if you can find a way to go and make 69. It is always possible to do it. You just have to try and find a way. Now, if your time is about to run out, I'll give you a clue. Go and click try again, and it restarts that minute for you, which is very useful, okay? So have a think. Is there a way that you could do it? One thing that can be useful, if you need to make a 1, the number 1, sometimes what you can do is do 5 divided by 5. A number divided by itself gives you the answer 1. And sometimes that can be a very useful thing to do. So perhaps you could go and see if you can solve that one. But your countdown challenge is good fun. There's a slightly different way to do it with brackets, but don't worry too much about that one. I would be sticking at this side and either total within 20 or the total within 100. Okay, so P6, have a really good go through today's activities, from your warm-up to your main activity, your word problems, your convince me card, and then the countdown challenge. And of course, you've always got time to go on to Education City and have a go at some of our Play Live games. Good luck.